course, many are aware of cymatics, but for those who are not, cymatics are the actual tones or shapes that you get when you play tones. And this is a part of the universal language. The universal language is sound, shape, and color. I'll say that again. Sound, shape, and color, because every sound has a shape and a color. Every shape has a sound and a color, and every color has a sound and a shape. And that's most important to realize, especially when studying esoteric knowledge, because you begin to start being able to make connections that otherwise wouldn't be so obvious. Now, how it's really come to us as far as this connection between sound, shape, and color and these images that you're seeing now is actually through a device that looks like this. And this is actually called a cymoscope. And a cymoscope is this object that there's obviously a speaker coil, as you can see, centered in the middle of the object, and then there's water, and then there's a camera to take the image of the frequencies that are being played through the device. And through this process, we've gotten much more familiar with the in-depth patterns and shapes behind cymatics. Also, you have your classic cymatic plates. This is called a Chladni device. Many have probably seen this before. This is where you put salt onto a plate and you begin to play a tone, and as that tone begins to resonate, then you begin to see the pattern that corresponds with that tone. So once again, we're getting deeper into the universal language. We find that sound actually equals a shape, and here is the proof of that. The next level is, of course, to establish the color. And what you're actually seeing in this diagram is the standard intonation chart of fa, sol, la, ti, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and also the corresponding frequencies in hertz, and then also the color spectrum, or the colors that those sounds make. So now we have an establishment between sound, shape, and color, but this is actually quite ancient knowledge all the way up until even modern times, that it's always been known that there's a correlation between sound, shape, and color, and here's the musical scale, the diatonic scale, and exactly how the tones on that scale make colors and what those colors are. So that's the first of this part of knowledge that I want you to understand, is the introductory of the universal language, because the universal language is the language that everything speaks, and it is our original language. And when we begin to use that language, we can communicate with all life forms. The next thing here, because we're going to get into obviously the head of this, the title of this particular presentation is Advanced Spiritual Curriculum and Quantum Field Activation. And I thought that the best way to actually get something like that going within the individual is actually to begin to introduce them to cosmic geometry and biological geometry and symbolism, and also linguistics, and how that affects you in everyday life, and how you use this system in order to create power within, and also to begin to emit power and create things that are without. So the next level of this, we have to actually go into the cosmos, because I will need to introduce everyone first to what the cosmos is doing. And this is very interesting, because a lot of times we wonder, why isn't the cosmos intervening in some of the situations that we're involved in? And, maybe there's an imbalance in the cosmos, but unfortunately, for many people, they find out that that's not true, that the cosmos actually is in perfect balance, and it balances itself through positive, negative, and neutral, and it does have an overarching goal, agenda, or purpose, and that is the meaning to all things, which is energy, and the projection and regeneration of perpetual energy. So I will have to explain this. There's no diagrams to actually show it unless we create it. And what it's really about is exactly how you get into the world, but more specifically, your purpose here and your connection with everything. And so how this works is what we would say is the oversoul. This is like the grown-up or adult version of you beyond the body. Some see the sun as a variation of an oversoul, sends emissions, and these emissions are in the form of light, because they're in the highest densities. And that light then pierces into the envelope, also known as the womb, also known as the matrix, also known as water. And when it embeds itself through that piercing into those physical planes or wombs, Then it begins the generation process. Now, the interesting part is that when we're emitted from the oversoul, we are in an exact identical of our oversoul. And how this would look is it would look like we're in seed germ or seed form. And obviously there are many seeds on the planet, and they do bear a lot of interesting geometry once you get into the geometry. But the seed form is in fact containing the compressed sound and energy of the oversoul. And the purpose of the seed and its geometry is to actually create a resonance between the seed and the oversoul. So if we put this in traditional sense, then we have a connection, sometimes called an umbilical cord, sometimes called a silver line, some call it the anchor in the chasm, but we have a connection with our oversoul that allows us to send and receive energy, the same way that we're receiving energy from the celestial bodies, receiving energy from the sun, etc. And this becomes something that you have to look deep into, because it also means that within each seed there is the whole, and the only process that's actually taking place is that we're growing up. And that's why humans grow upwards. We're growing up in order to actually become identical to our oversoul or our graduated state. And we begin here first as the seed germs, and as long as the seed is cultivated properly, and that's why there's a huge need for gardeners or people who understand husbandry or understand how to actually cultivate seeds in a reality and allow them to become to their maximum strength. Because what happens is that this creates a bridge of perpetual energy that connects us and our ancestors and all there is in the cosmos. And so this is very important, because it actually gets us into exactly why we would need to maintain a connection with our higher self and actually eventually become our higher self. So today we're talking about the oversoul, but this knowledge that you're going to receive is going to actually let you learn how to separate, to decrease the separation between you and your oversoul, and also actually become that. So also remember that every time there's a penetration, there is also an imprint or an image. That's also often referred to as a mark that does resonate the actual identity of the oversoul. And that's actually what symbolism is. Symbolism is the seed form or two-dimensional form of something that has the magnitude and power that, well, how can I put this? The magnitude and power is still in baby form and it's growing up, but still the seed possesses all of that magnitude and all of that power. So we're going to keep going here. And we're going to show here again this transition. And what this transition is about is actually in densities. So you start to see the connection, because the connection here is actually every single life form is filling a specific space in the continuum, meaning that the colors that we see on the spectrum, the density of life forms that we see on the spectrum, the variation of personalities that we see on the spectrum, the zodiacal signs that we see on the spectrum, all of this is spaced out to create a bridge between the oversouls and the seeds in order to create a continuum of perpetual energy. So this is the main purpose of the creation here on earth, is to continue having that bridge, and also to allow us to remain connected to our energetic force. So now we begin to move into the deeper part of this, because obviously we have some very esoteric knowledge that we want to reveal today. And the first part of that is actually the world, or what I would refer to as the word and the world. Now we start to begin to see that these actual terms are very identical. In fact, the word is the same as the world except for adding an L. And in linguistics and etymology, you learn that the symbol of the L actually means in ancient languages the symbol of the god. So what's actually being said here is the Supreme Being can in fact create worlds through words. And as we go on, we'll start to see that words have, and tones and vibrations have everything to do with the creation of worlds. And we see that this whirl is actually the wave or the spiral and the frequency that emits as we speak tones and vibrations. So let's get a little bit deeper here just to give you some examples. We have here what many refer to as a mantra, okay? And what mantras are seeds and emanations of created worlds. I'm going to let that soak in for just a minute. The tones that you hear in a mantra, and that's why there's always a purpose within the mantra to actually pronounce it correctly, because what they actually are is they're seeds to worlds. And when, let's say, you have 1,000-petal lotus, then you have 1,000-syllable mantra that must be said perfectly in order for that world to be realized. So the whole purpose of mantra is to actually bring the energy of a specific world. Now, of course, there's tons of mantras just as there's tons of worlds, and each of the tones and the vibrations create unique variations in these worlds. So to prove that even more, you now come to a mandala, which is actually a visual representation of a mantra. And mandalas are often used, especially if you look into the Tibetan system, is they're used to create patterns that eventually become embedded within the consciousness. So that when the Lama is doing the astral travel, then they're able to astral travel to a specific place. Also in the vision or also in the meditation, they're able to travel into a specific place. So a mandala then is a two-dimensional imprint of worlds. And again, they're mineralized to promote astral travel into that world. So this is what you would see if you took a mandala and took it into a three-dimensional format. So this is known as a kingdom, and it's brought about through the chanting and the tones and the vibrations that are going across time. Now, I'll explain that. See, every time we say something, even though it may get less and less as far as audibly, it's still traveling because it will even move through walls. And when sound is moving through walls, then it gets smaller. So it comes out of the visual, it comes out of the audible spectrum of what we can hear, but it's still playing a sound. And that sound actually sounds like a ringing in your ear. That's actually not tinnitus. Generally, it's the presence of an energetic form. So these tones and vibrations, and that's why there's chanting going on across a continuum in order to create a bridge, meaning that ancient cultures chanted to connect to their ancestors that were doing that same chanting across another level of the timeline. And so this becomes another very important fact, that we actually connect to our ancestors even subconsciously and through meditation. And we can connect to those ancestors from thousands and thousands of years ago. So what does that mean? What that means is that the ability that we have to use our tones and vibrations, and not only our mental or frontal lobe projections, allow us to break what we would call time, the speed of light, and those kind of things that hinder what we would call the world from the living to the world from what we perceive as the dead, but which is really the afterlife, which takes place on another time frame. So it gets even deeper, though, with language, that when we start to really study language, we find that language and symbolism do run hand in hand. They never should be separated from one another. Languages are symbols. Mathematical expressions are symbols. So even in studying the symbols in math, like the division symbol, you find that there's one dot, another dot, and a line in the middle, and that means division. So what's being said is one dot is, let's say, the spiritual body, and then another dot is the other spiritual body, and then the line in the middle is the realm in which that separates those two spiritual bodies, and that brings up division. So as we said before, these lines that you see, and you'll see it in concentric circles, you'll see it in spirals, those lines that you see in between those areas are actually what separate one realm from another. And when you're utilizing another body which could be your voice, which could be your astral projection. It could be another vehicle like your ran, which is an Egyptian term for your astral body. You can pierce through those membranes because they're like veils in between one dimension and another. So sound, the sounds that we can emit and the thoughts that we have actually do that. But if you look at this chart, there's something even deeper to be revealed, and it's the connection between language and geology. Because what we'll find is that the first characters, and there's a book called The Passing of Rivers, or there's a language called The Passing of Rivers, and then there's another book that's called The Four Rivers of Life. And what this book starts to show is that the rivers on the earth are actually lined out to the constellations in the cosmos, and that the first languages were actually developed on those patterns. And in addition to that, the zodiac, as we know it, was actually used in order to create the language. The symbols within the stars that we call the zodiac are also used to create the symbols within language, in this case Hebrew. And then when you put all of those languages together, or all those words together, then they create a specific symbol, in this case the Magan star, which is very ancient. So now we're starting to see the connection within all of this, and I'm going to take a moment to recap so that way it all starts to really connect for you. So because sound is shape, is color, it means that every time we say something, we're literally creating a world. But the perfection in what we're saying determines whether that world comes into existence, whether that seed grows up to become a manifestation, or it becomes null and void, meaning it falls into the chasm of nothingness. And let's look at a good explanation of that here. What you'll see is you'll see in one of the more older charts of antiquity that the language, and this is of course a priest, is to be pronounced a certain kind of way in order to activate the actual tone itself. And that's done by the palatio. It's done all the way down into the chest. And because the whole purpose here is that, see, in English, just really the top of the mouth is used. And then maybe a little bit above what we would call the Adam's apple is used. But very little of the guttural tones that you see in the ancient languages. And there's a reason for this. Because when you have the ancient language, you're actually speaking all the way from down deep. And then the word goes up through your passages, which would be your chakra centers, and then comes out of your mouth in full manifestation because you've now taken that word and you've pronounced it properly. So what we're seeing here is the diagram showing that where the words are actually pronounced and how that connects with the windpipe and how that actually connects with other parts of the body. So that way when a word is pronounced, in order for it to fully manifest, then it must go through the chakra centers of the being. So this lets you know right away that you have this power of being able to bring something from what we would say is the subjective plane into the physical plane. So generally that's called from inception to conception. Inception is the idea or the thought of it, right? And then so that idea and that thought starts, and that's the inception. And then the conception is if you can actually birth it into a physical world. Now remember, the process of birthing something in from the astral to the physical means that the seed or the word not only must be pronounced properly, but it must be put into the space or the environment in which it needs to grow. And that's actually the whole part of why the elements became so important, because if you were trying to accomplish something specific, then you would go into the environment that promoted that vibration and tone and nourished it properly in order for it to come to manifestation. Now, of course, today this is called magic, but there actually was no use for languages beyond this purpose, meaning that there was actually no use for speaking verbally except for to create things. So many of the life forms and many of the things that we see here in the world today were created from using the tones and vibrations that the ancestors spoke. And these tones and vibrations have been existing throughout antiquity and even before time. So let's move a little bit further here, because now we see another diagram, because I know some may ask, well, what about English? Because we talked about Hebrew and how when Hebrew is connected together that it makes a two-dimensional symbol called a Megan star. When you take English, which is actually a cognate of fractal rune, and runestones, and you put all of that together, along with even the numbers and certain key symbolism that's used in the reality, you actually get this symbol, and this is known as the monogram of English because it contains every single pattern necessary to bring forth everything from the English language and the fractal runes. In addition, when you study occultism, you find out that this is actually the diagram of the incarnated world that most are living in now if they've taken on the English language in their mind and they don't have another variation such as their own imagination or their own ancestral tongue, etc., in order to allow them to realize that the world is much more than just this symbol. So these symbols actually become more or less embedded within our consciousness and then begin to unpack themselves. So symbols, once again, are encrypted expressions of vast states of thought. And why is that? It's because the origins of a symbol come from the oversoul, and then it embeds itself, and then it's left to be unpacked. And that's what we're seeing within the diagrams that were shown. Obviously, again, this is a two-dimensional symbol of something that is yet to be unpacked. And then when it's unpacked, it comes out like this. And so what governs whether or not it can be unpacked is if it's put into the consciousness. This could be collective consciousness. This could be personal consciousness. If it's put into a collective or conscious environment in order for it to completely unfold itself. So that means that if a person doesn't believe this is true, they don't believe that their words have any power, they don't believe that there's any connection to the English language and spelling or spells and magic and all of that kind of stuff, then it means that it never actually generally comes to fruition what they're attempting to manifest. But we also have learned with things like The Secret and those kind of systems that what you think about and what you focus on does indeed begin to manifest. But that's a light version and explanation of what's really going on. The next thing that we have to take a look at here is actually planetary geometry. And obviously I did a flat earth panel, so I'm not talking about just balls spinning around in the air. In fact, I revealed a little bit during that session that all celestial bodies, and I'll repeat that again, all celestial bodies are planets or stars, which are the spirits of the celestial bodies but moving in the deep. Meaning that they're actually moving in the water of the ocean that surrounds Earth, which is pretty much infinite. And their orbits create these patterns, and these patterns are because their shapes, their tones, their vibrations, and their modes of thought. And this is how we've come to actually understand even the gods. And that's why the gods generally represent themselves under these symbolism. Now, there's been a big corruption between what gods are because the word God actually means the Germanic god Gud. So in every tense, I'm going to use a term that makes it a little bit easier, which is supreme being. You are a supreme being. You are a cosmos within. And the images that I'm showing you are just small variations and portions of what you truly are. So if you look back into the Enlightenment era, you'll find that this knowledge was already known. In this diagram, you actually see somewhat of an explosion of the cosmic bodies that are embedded within the being. Here's a chart that makes it easier to understand. I'm going to hold on that for a while and then come back to it. But it just means that all of these celestial bodies, or what we call a cosmos, is inside of you. So this is why you can actually create with words of power, because indeed you are a supreme being and you have those tones and vibrations moving through you, and you have the environment in order to create things using those tones and vibrations. So the act of creation itself is something that can be done by any being that is aware of their power. And in fact, many people have children, so they're already witnessing their form of creation, of putting in their seed and allowing that seed to go into the womb, and in the womb beginning to manifest a baby version or a smaller version of the adult so that it grows up to emulate the adult. Now, Our duty as parents then would be to keep growing to the stage of the oversoul, so that way our children see our growth and then also follow the route that we go and begin to grow up into their total and full potential, which is actually limitless. Now, some more proof that this embedding of our chakra centers or the celestial bodies within us. So let's talk about a couple things that are synonymous with one another. It would be our organs in our body, chakras, geometry, mandalas, mantras. So all of that is actually the full comprising of the human being. So we have a lot of power within us, and that power is yet to be manifested within many. But with this kind of knowledge, you begin to realize, hey, this all connects. It's more difficult for me to believe that this is not happening, and then I better start to think about my own personal power versus bowing down or worshiping something or believing in something external, or just not doing anything with the magnificent gift that you've been given. Now here we have another ancient chart. And this chart once again shows those expressions of geometry embedded within the body. That's what's here, if you can still see it distinguished. Again, it's rather old, so it came in a parchment that was slightly damaged. But if you notice that there's a reference to the zodiac signs, as you've seen in many charts about your chakra centers, etc. And there's a reference to the geometry of the orbits of the celestial bodies. And again, that's because the seed germs that have been used in order to create the composite being that we're calling human all have in themselves specific geometry. And when we start looking at that a little bit more, we start to realize why the tones, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, or the actual mantras that are used for the chakras were so important, because they actually do create these patterns. And that's why you can hear your chakras through tones and vibrations, because it actually allows them to resonate. Because remember we talked about, it's all resonance, that the reason why you have a connection with the oversoul is because there is an imprint of the oversoul inside of you, and through resonance you have that connection, and that connection is very similar to magnetics. And I'll explain something very simple here. If you hold two magnets together in the attracting poles when they snap together, if you pull them apart, you can feel the force between the two. But as you pull them apart further and further, you feel less and less of that force. But it doesn't mean that force is gone. In fact, if you take one magnet and you go to the other side of the world and you still have that other magnet at your house, there is still a connection or a link between those two magnets. And in fact, there's a connection and link between all magnetic fields, and that's what our ancestors utilized to communicate, what we call synchronicity, to harness power across the grid, which we call the ley lines, and many different things that actually come out today as geomancy. So we're going to talk about that in just a moment, but I do want to clarify on this chart what you're seeing is you're seeing the vowels and how their tone and vibration. You see the connection with those tones and vibrations in mandalas. So you understand that every time you say something, a partial world is coming out of your mouth. And then even deeper, you see the connection between these patterns and your DNA. And that's why the more centered that you get into yourself, the more you begin to perfect your own consciousness, the more power and ability you have to control your destiny. And that's why this becomes so important. And I'll pause for a minute here, because I do have a minute and 30, and it looks like we're still, we're almost through the presentation and ready to get a question, but we do have some time. But I do want to explain something that I see, because I've been teaching for now 7 years publicly and studying the spiritual knowledge since I was 5 years old. And what I found was the greatest hindrance to our process was actually us getting stuck in dogmatic and religious systems. Now, I will put a disclaimer there that many of these things are steps for us on the ladder. They're actually in charge of governing some of the energy until we start realizing exactly what is going on, meaning that when there's a lot of energy and that energy fills you at one time, it may be too much for your vessel to hold. So sometimes these systems can work as being able to regulate those energies before you're ready to turn yourself on to the total reality of you as a supreme being. And that could be, in my book, the only purpose, that one should continuously move up the ladder of total realization and realize that there is no God in the sky that one should be worshiping or bowing down to, that one should actually be looking in and within, which we call understanding, and then start to really connect with themselves, because the universe is inside of you. Because just imagine, all of what I reveal within this last 33 minutes is paramount to time travel, hyper levels of sentience, cross-communication beyond time, invention of things that are not yet under the sun or in this reality, connection with totality. So we're talking about the big stuff here. And this is, of course, why this knowledge has been so governed in our reality and also hidden, because of the power that it possesses. It possesses the power to put you in the driver's seat as the Lord and Master of your own life, rather than some other entity or life form or whatever that they're bringing to you next in order for you to be controlled through another system. So I'll keep going here, but just realize once again that this connection is very powerful, and it's something that you have within you already. It's not something that you need to go and find somewhere. All you have to do is begin to connect with it. You have this imagery. As I said, you can check us out at Secret Energy. A lot of this stuff has been made available. You can do your own research on cymatics. You can dig a little bit deeper into what mantras and mandalas are. What I also do recommend, though, is before you go saying any mantra and mandala, that you understand and learn what tones and vibrations really do, because we do know some people who've gotten in trouble with pronouncing tones and vibrations and mantras and all that kind of stuff, and not understanding the true intention behind what they're doing. So I have to go even deeper. I'm going to go into the genetic level of the human being with something that few know about, and it's called phosphenes. And phosphenes are actually, when we press into our eyes, which is a form of meditation, you press into your eyes for about 5 to 7 minutes, or excuse me, not that long, but about 2 to 3 minutes, excuse me, even less time, 30 seconds. You begin to see these black and white patterns. And when phosphenes were examined, like the black and white patterns that are seen in the mind's eye, it was connected immediately with drawings that children make, the most powerful symbols in the world, also known as the ineffable names of God, the concave pentagram, 1111, everyone's familiar with that, I'm sure, the spiral. So all of these symbols are actually found on the genetic level of the human being. So this is also why a person can be triggered by these symbols so easily. So if we're living in a society that uses this kind of symbolism, as we're seeing here, in McDonald's signs or in corporation signs or in clothing, then that would trigger the person to more of an ancestral recount of their primordial existence. And so they would feel some kind of connection to that. So this is actually what we have to worry about. If there's anything to worry about, this is what we would need to be wise about. I guess that's probably a better word, is when symbolism is used to actually control consciousness. So you're seeing here organic Venus, organic Saturn at their poles. And then now what you're seeing here in this image is inorganic Venus inverted and inorganic Saturn inverted, and this is called drawing down the power of the stars. This is actually geomancy. This is when the energy or the correspondence of the zodiacal sign is utilized and embedded within the geology or the actual geometric construct in the streets or on the ground, and then that energy is brought forth and harnessed. And in this tense, what you'll find is that there is no good and bad planets. What you actually have is there's a positive, a negative, and a neutral. Because remember, even within yourself, you're not only a planet, you're also a universe. So this means, as you know, you have your good side, and then you have your bad side, and then what you're working to do in most cases is to find your neutral, your harmonic balance, right? So in this case, in this geomancy, what's brought forth is, instead of Saturn's upright status, which is wisdom, fatherhood, focus, patience, willpower. Saturn's inverted aspects, which is ignorance, vengeance, malice, and death, is brought forward. And this, of course, is the geomancy that's in the streets of Washington, D.C. Once again, you have Venus, when upright, creates love, connectivity, sweetness, and passion, but when inverted, brings lust and disharmony and divorce, etc. So this is how geomancy is used in order to draw down the power of the stars in order to infuse the area in all the things that are going on in that area, the laws, the rules, the people who are walking in that territory, the decisions that are made in this White House, etc. And then I'm sure some caught that there's an inverted owl embedded within in the street. And the only way you know what direction it's facing is by how they point the pentagram, and the geometry lets you see what is true north. And so all the symbolism here is inverted. So instead of the owl being upright, the owl is actually inverted, which is actually a sign of ignorance, because the sign turned upright is a sign of intelligence. So I also encourage people to, instead of judging a lot of this symbolism right away and saying, oh, that's evil, to realize that everything in the reality has a positive, a negative, and a neutral, and it's for us to divine the true meaning of things. But once again, there's another deeper level of this, and this is our last level of depth, and then we're going to start taking some questions here, and that's how these signs and symbols, as I mentioned earlier, can be utilized in order to provoke a level of thought and a feeling inside of your consciousness that may instinctually feel right. And so this means that the level of manipulation that we're dealing with in the world today actually is utilizing the symbolism in order to trigger us into believing certain things, and then that symbolism is taken and basically formed and fashioned into the idealism of whatever they want you to think. So what you're looking at here on the top is actually radiolaria, and this is George Haeckel's work on discovery of pulling things from the ocean during the Enlightenment era. What you're then seeing on the left is what we would call now the Maltese Cross, which you now see on the crest of Knights Templar and most secret societies. And that's used as a symbol of power, but its original origin is actually from the ocean. That's why it tends to connect back to the Merovingians or the Holy See, because they're direct plagiarizations from things taken from our mother or our womb. So what you're seeing, just in a nutshell, is symbolism is taken from the origins of life. And then that symbolism is in turn used to trigger our consciousness into believing in something that actually has a far more primordial existence than what generally is depicted. So we see even in the center a radiolaria that looks like the Virgin Mary, but is actually something that is pulled from the ocean that may indeed contain that kind of essence. In addition, you see another cross that is pulled from the ocean, and in most geometry you'll find pentagrams, hexagons, etc. are found in the ocean. So they don't actually have a connection with many of these religious systems and dogmas. They have a connection more with what goes on in the ocean and how that comes about in our reality today. But I do want to say before we come to a conclusion that you need to know where your power comes from. And what that's going to allow you to do is it's going to allow you to not be fooled by all these systems that are out here that are claiming that, you know, they have the power and that, you know, that you should worship them and that the symbols belong to them, because that actually begins to distort our consciousness. And then when you begin to see all this and studying what I'm showing you, you begin to see not only that this comes from an organic nature, but also that it's within you. And so the only thing necessary is for you to begin to study self. And then when you study self, then you unlock all.
The flower of life. So this is what the West, they know that the name as flower of life. And when the light combined with the true yang, the sexual energy, it becomes the secret of the golden flower. So the currently, actually, we say water and fire. And that is the first form of the petal of flower. And when we combine them to, when we have another currently form in here, so we call the light fire elements. So you have water, fire, wood, metal, and earth. And that is the first forming of the secret of flower, secret of golden flower. Or known as the flower of life. And this is what they are. So the water into the cauldron, or we call the earth. And the fire under the cauldron. And now we left the metal and wood. So when the metal creating more water, so we have endless supply of more water. And the wood try to burn like fire. So we dissolve the internal conflict. Okay, so
and agar is the polysaccharide from gracilaria. So all Peachtree dishes that they use, they start with gracilaria in them. So now, if we take away antiviral drugs, antibiotic drugs, we take away the Peachtree dishes, and then we take away the kelp and bladderwrack extract that we know of as iodine, right? Because that's what the fuck this is. This is kelp and bladderwrack extract, people. So when you look at all this fucking iodine shit, this is kelp and bladderwrack extract. Okay? Kelp and bladderwrack extract. So now what would hospitals do? What would hospitals do without this? What would hospitals do? You goofy niggas. What would hospitals do without algae? No iodine, no Peachtree dishes, no antiviral drugs. What the fuck would the hospitals be without the algae? I'm gonna fucking wait. This is participation. I wanna hear you niggas. What would the Western pharmaceutical fucking hospital industry be without algae? Yeah, you know what? I agree, but I caught the sentiment though. I feel the love. I know where he was going with it. Thank you. We got some people answering the question correct. No antivirals. No antivirals means what? No vaccines, no iodine, no petri dishes, and no petri dish means there's no research. There's no scientific papers. No scientific papers means there's no scientific journals. Nigga, without control over the fucking algae, the entire Western healing thing collapses because it's all built on the fucking algae. This is why I'm saying buy your CMOS with me. Because we need to build up our bag, our collective purchase power until we can fucking tell him yay or fucking nay. Nah, we good. This how we moving this here like this. Kelvin. Oh, fuck Kelvin up. Fuck Kelvin up. Me and Kelvin gonna fight, goddammit. Boy, Kelvin, boy. That boy Kelvin sharp as a pencil, a number 2 pencil on test day in this motherfucker, huh? That boy Kelvin came his motherfucking sharp as a number 2 pencil on test day. Yeah. Yeah, I starting to go back to that shit like, that nigga said algae. That nigga said algae, didn't he? Hold on now. I'm just trying to show you something. And we not finished with this algae shit. We not finished either. We not finished. Nah. That's how they do me. You got to check my channel. They don't want these notifications to go out. My algorithm be under the bus. Yeah. Man, we're going to get it together, sis. That part is coming. Not yet. That part is coming. That part's coming too, Alex. We're going to get there too. Right? But we haven't even really hit the nail on the head yet. We haven't hit the nail on the head yet. And I want to show you guys something. And with carbon. You remember, I told you guys that the algae is in charge of fixing carbon. Algae is in charge of fixing carbon. When I say these things, in my mind, I be assuming sometimes that the people that are listening, you guys, know a certain amount so that when I say something like that, it'll click. And I know, a lot of times I overestimate. Right? I get it. A lot of times I'm overestimating. You know what I'm saying? Shit's not clicking. So, what I need you guys to understand when I say that algae fixes carbon, this is what you guys have to understand about this. Fixing carbon includes designing the fucking atmosphere. Should I drop mic? How do I drop mic with no mic? I can't drop these are my mics, right? I can't just drop my fucking headphones, goddammit. These are my favorite headphones of all time. These shits look goofy, but if you want a good pair of headphones, these are them. I love these. All right. Apple has to figure out how to make them a little bit more feng shui for working out, shit like that. But I love those headphones. I need you niggas to absorb that shit. Maybe I should walk off and give you a fucking minute. You niggas need a minute? Some of you niggas need a drink or you need to roll up and smoke some shit. I need you to understand what the fuck I just said. This is one of those moments. I need you guys to get what I just said. The algae literally designs the atmosphere. Take off the yo, Rudy is a fucking fool. Yo, I love this nigga. Rudy's a ratchet hood nigga. That's what Rudy is, bro. You need more Rudys in this chat. Rudy is me! Fucking maniac. Yeah, hold on. Are you saying the algae designs the atmosphere? Not by itself. Not by itself. The sun, through the umbilical cord, the sun is feeding into our plasma sphere, and that's an aspect. But I mean literally like clouds, where the clouds are placed, like that's algae. We're not even gonna get into the blue light shit. We're gonna leave that off for this one. Yeah. We're not even gonna go there. We're not even gonna go there and say that it's the algae, the only thing standing between you and blue light taking you the fuck up out of here. We're gonna leave that alone. But we're talking about being quarantined for carbon emissions. Listen, make it plain. Don't say greenhouse, this, all this bullshit. Make it plain. When you make it plain, people can understand. So they're talking about indefinitely quarantining people for carbon emissions. Now, the reason why too much carbon is going up instead of being fixed and tied to something that can be sunk into the ground, the soil, the ocean floor, is because of the fucking meat industry. And not even the meat industry. Let me apologize to the meat industry. It's not you guys. We're not even going to put this on you guys. In fact, the meat industry, and I owe them a huge apology. God damn it. Let me be the first one. We're going to we can't put no respect on their name. The meat industry is fucking savage. But we do have to apologize because we blame them with the cows and the animals to eat. That's not the biggest problem. And there's a lot of you sneaky niggas that's watching this video. When I say this next thing, you're going to realize you part of the problem. You niggas, you. Get this finger all in your fucking face. You nigga, you the fuck up. You fucking up. You know the bigger problem than the meat industry to carbon emissions is the fucking fish industry. The fucking fish industry. The fish industry. Because the fish is destroying all of the algae, and the phytoplankton in the ocean. They're destroying the ability to fix carbon. They're destroying this planet's ability to fix carbon. And you goofy niggas, oh, y'all just eat fish. Y'all just eat fish. Yo, no, yo, Ink, I'm working on it. Yo, I'm working on it. God, I'm off that red meat. You know, I'm just on chicken and fish. I told you niggas a long time ago that couldn't stop eating fucking meat. You niggas need to go get you some turkey. Turkey is high in selenium, high in zinc, and it's not high in people's shopping list. So it means it's not that adulterated. You don't have a rush to buy turkey unless you're buying fucking cold cuts or Thanksgiving. And it gives you niggas the chicken feel. You got wings and all that shit. I told you, leave the fucking cockroaches out the water. Your shrimps, leave them fucking nasty ass water bugs alone. You niggas, I told you, leave them big ass cockroaches. A lobster's a big cockroach. I told you niggas. Oh yeah, fish is good. Who said that? Who said that? Who came up with this shit? Oh, fish is good, dude. No, fish is, yeah, we gotta eat this fish. Omega-3. Who the fuck told you that? Who told you that? Who the fuck told you to eat fish for omega-3? There's no omega-3s. Fish don't make omega-3s. There's no omega-3s comes from fish. Fish are incapable of making DHA. They do not make omega-3. That is a fucking lie. That's a fish industry lie. To keep you niggas eating fish. They came up with that. They told you that shit. That's like asking McDonald's about the Big Mac. They're like, oh, that shit's amazing. Yeah, says McDonald's. The fuck out of here. Fish don't make no fucking omega-3. They eat it. Because they eat the little phytoplankton. And guess what else they eat? They eat the algae. Yeah. That's how fish get omega-3. Same way you can. Take your girl on a floating date with ocean steak. Take your girl on a floating date with ocean steak. You'd be surprised if you have a date in the water, how that date will turn out. I have had the most amazing date ever in all of life. Almost exclusively in water. Now somebody say, well, you know, Inky, you know, you kind of are Inky, so we expect that from you. You're like a merman. Just respect life. Right? Respect life. Can't respect life if you don't respect water. Huh? What are we doing? Watch this. Let's go look up some shit. I know that's what y'all like. Let's go look up some shit. Yeah. You gotta see this shit. You gotta show us this shit. What do you mean that the algae is making clouds? Nigga, like, what the fuck is going on? Hey, go back to that. Hey, go back to that shit with you kick that Al Gore shit, nigga. That's what we gonna call algae from now on. We gonna call algae Al Gore. You wanna hear that Al Gore? You wanna hear that Al Gore shit, eh? Alright, well, fuck it. You know what? If y'all want to hear some more shit, we got fuck all this. We gotta go to the commercial break, goddammit. See if we can lose. I couldn't even leave it on there. I just had to flash it on you niggas one time for the one time and get out the way. Huh? Y'all see that? A new international study has found that large brown seaweeds, when under stress, release large quantities of inorganic iodine into the coastal atmosphere, where it may contribute to cloud formation. These chemicals act as condensation nuclei around which clouds may form. Listen. The iodine from brown seaweeds acts as the nuclei for cloud formation? Hold on. Let's get the driptuation together now. See, now you can see me. How you doing? We get the driptuation together. You see what I'm saying? We got to have driptuation. Why the fuck are we getting a big ass hole in our atmosphere? Because you goofy niggas like Red Lobster. You goofy niggas want to keep eating fish and tuna fish and all this other bullshit. You goofy niggas are out there hugging up the fucking Chinese people and the Japanese people instead of telling them knock off that dumb shit y'all doing with the goddamn water. Okay? You Oriental motherfuckers, y'all want to be cool with niggas? Stop fucking up the water. Every time we turn around, he's spilling some shit in there. Nuclear this, nuclear. What the fuck is happening with them people? And they eat every goddamn thing swimming. That's what the fuck we need a worldwide association on. We need to narrow them niggas down to what the fuck they can eat. Okay? You niggas can't just eat every goddamn thing that's alive. The fuck is happening over there? There's a hole over our planet because our oceans are being raped. And our oceans are not able to fix the carbon and refill the clouds, refill the atmosphere. The connection between our oceans and our magnetosphere or our plasma bubble that we live in is being broken. The connection between the plasma that covers this planet and the oceans that cover this planet are the algae. That is the connection between the plasma bubble that envelop this planet as a part of the umbilical cord. We this whole page here. So you can see this clearly. Now, what I'm communicating on this page for the people that have this book, before I delete all this stuff so you can see the main thing I'm trying to show you right now, is that stars, they're tears. The tears from stars are what actually create life. Anyway, that's another thing. But we get to this work right here. Alright, so what I'm showing in this is the relationship of our sun to our planet. The tears of Ra, right, or the plasma from the sun, right, forms an umbilical cord that connects our planet to the sun. The reason why there's no life on other planets is because there's no umbilical cord coming from the sun that envelops them to give them protection from the rest of the universe. So our planet is a child, and its parent, whether you want to go mother or father, is what protects this planet. Inside this plasma bubble, we have our atmosphere, which is the white cloud here symbolizing. Right? So the blue cloud coming off this little pathway here This is the plasma coming from the sun. This is our plasma bubble that our planet is wrapped in. Then the white cloud represents our atmosphere. Now, the sun has a negative charge, our atmosphere has a positive charge, and our earth gives off a negative charge, and that is the electromagnetism that actually keeps clouds in the sky that weigh the same as 100 elephants type shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, these clouds are heavy. It's electromagnetism that keeps them in the sky. Anyway, but this is what I'm talking about, right? So this atmosphere, the connection of our atmosphere to our planet, happens through the work of the phytoplankton and the algae. And because goofy niggas is fucking it up, we don't get it. We don't understand what's happening right now. We're taking massive L's right now. Oh my God. Yeah, this book is crazy. Yeah, if you don't have this is I King squared. We live in the placenta. The sun's placenta. Niggas have not yet deduced the solution. It's very simple. We don't need a fucking quarantine. We only need one of two things. For the governments to collude and re-fucking plant our oceans. Right? We don't need a quarantine on that. We need to quarantine the fucking water. All we gotta do is stop motherfuckers from fucking up the ocean. Just make that. Let's quarantine the water. Make it illegal to fucking eat out of the ocean. Period. No life out of the ocean, except for plants or whatever. No fish, no shrimps, no lobsters, no dolphins, no whales, none of that. No sharks, no fucking seals, none of that. You can get your phytoplankton, you can get your kelps, your seaweeds, that's it. Let the ocean do what it do. See, y'all don't know y'all history. About here, people. What does this mean? Does this mean anything to anybody? From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battles in the air, on land, and sea. First to fight for right and freedom and to keep our honor clean, we are proud to claim the title of United States. But what is this? The first two lines. We had trick in the fucking water, nigga. We had trick in the water. But the same like today, trick is a dinosaur. So the dinosaurs go extinct, and after the dinosaurs go extinct, shit gets crazy. But we had a trick in the ocean that was protecting the oceans. And now we don't have that. So the ocean's unprotected. And what's happening is not a result of land animals. We gotta apologize to the meat industry, because in all honesty, people have been eating meat for a long fucking time. It never put a fucking hole in the atmosphere. Niggas have been eating meat on this motherfucker since they was here. Certain groups. certain groups of people have been eating meat on this planet for thousands of years. Never put a hole in the ozone. It never did. Why? Because it was part of a cycle of death and rebirth. But what they're doing with the oceans, they're removing the cycle of death. So they're eliminating the possibility of our rebirth. Come on now. I ain't even going to get into fossil fuel being cannibalism. Alright? I ain't going to go with the fossil fuel being cannibalism because y'all niggas think, y'all seem to think that oil is okay. That's why people make fun of me all the time with my lawnmower. Be like, my lawnmower vegan, nigga. I got electric lawnmower. Like, yo, you need to get a more powerful lawnmower than that. That's why your dad saying you need a real lawnmower. You need a gas lawnmower. I'm like, and my lawnmower vegan. They're like, my lawnmower vegan too. It just run on gas. I'm like, nigga, gas is not vegan. Oh, I know, it's fossils. See? Nomenclature, trigonometry. You say fossils, it removes the life. It's like calling a cow beef so you can eat it without thinking about cows. Well, why didn't they change the name of chicken? Because nobody gave a fuck about chickens. That's why. We didn't have indigenous cultures that deified chickens. So they didn't need to change the name of chicken. They just violated chickens. But cows, woo, divine all over. Divine all over. People worship cows. So you can just eat no goddamn cow. You have to change the name of that shit. No, this ain't cow. This is beef. This is beef. This is cattle. This is livestock. Oh, okay. All right. I guess it's not. I guess it's all right then. Nomenclature. Nomenclature. Trigonometry. Indigenous cultures. One of the things that separated indigenous cultures from what they would call savages is the burial practices. Go back and do some study of ancient culture. This is one of the things that separated civilized cultures from quote-unquote savage cultures is how they handled their dead. What did they do with their dead people? And civilized people, they have burial sites, graveyards. Well, all graveyards are future sites of fossil fuel. Yes. Every graveyard is going to become fossil fuel at some point. The earth is going to pressurize the carbon, little microbiome, along with that carbon. Oh yeah, it's going to break that down. It's going to become oil. So how many of your ancient burial sites does your car need to fill up? How many ancient burial sites do you get into your car, your gas tank for $20? So when y'all talking about all these ancient societies that was in America, and this and that, and you going back to this group and that group, and the Olmecs was here before Columbus, and 20,000 years ago, 40,000 years ago. These are our ancestors. You know, all that fake bullshit y'all niggas be. Oh, these are our ancestors. We gotta represent for the ancestors. Get your ass out of here, nigga. You ain't represent for no fucking ancestors. You fucking fraud, fake ass nigga. You put your ancestor in your fucking gas tank, nigga. You put your ancestor in your gas tank, nigga. The fuck out of here.
The Tao really emphasize, changing the color. So the Tao really emphasize the five enlightenment. and the soul and the spirit, that is the first enlightenment. Hello? Go ahead. And that's the first enlightenment. Second enlightenment, when you realize that you have a 5 baby soul and the spirit. That is the second enlightenment. And the third enlightenment is when you decide to accept the responsibility to raise and educating your soul and the spirit. And that is the third enlightenment. This is very important because the Tao said some people come to this world, they don't know that they have a soul and spirit. When they don't know that they have 5 baby soul spirit, they don't care about it. Like a person in a family, they have 5 baby and 5 baby. I think that he have to change his life. He's not going to go out to drink, drunk, and dancing until 3 o'clock in the morning. So they said, in the Tao said, when a person realizes that, oh, I have the baby soul spirit, I need to take care of it, educating it, and that is the beginning of the journey into the spiritual work. So when we have the light, we have a mirror on the back we call the optic nerve, reflecting the light, and go right into organ by organ, organ by organ, and fill up the whole empty space. Otherwise, our organ living in a very dirty space. The same thing, people sick and dying because of the environment are so dirty.